Welcome into another edition of Badger 247 Radio. As always, I'm your host, Evan Flood. Going to be talking a little recruiting today. We don't do enough of those shows, so we will have one dedicated solely to recruiting. We're going to be joined by 24/7 Sports National Director of Recruiting, Steve Wiltfong, who will give the scoop on what he saw from Wisconsin commits Cole Van Lanen and Garrett Rand. We're also going to discuss Wisconsin's latest commit, three-star defensive end Isaiah Loudermilk, an eight-man football product, and what the Badgers have to complete before National Signing Day on February 3rd. So sit back, relax, and get ready for the camp coming at you right now. Maybe something like Jamal Cheesehead, Terrence Dairy Farm. Neither of those is probably pretty likely, but Wisconsin goes out to Kansas to get a three-star defensive end from an eight-man football school. And for those of you who aren't familiar with what eight-man football is, even I had to look it up when I first read about it. It's exactly what it sounds like, only 8 players on each side of the ball. So you watch this kid's highlights, and it's exactly what you would think of when you see a 6'6", 285-pounder playing 8-man football in the state of Kansas. Not only is he from Kansas, where it's not like there's a ton of high-quality football being played across the state certainly doesn't produce a lot of FBS prospects, but now he's in an 8-man football league, just pushing, kids half his size around. It's tough to make a lot out of his film. You do like the fact that he's 6'6", 285, plays some basketball. He can move, so the measurables from what you would look for in a defensive end in a 3-4 defense, a taller, athletic guy, long wingspan, can get his hands up in passing lanes, can hide those blitzing outside linebackers. Really just a guy that can eat up space. You don't need him to rush too much. You just want him to control the line, take the running lanes away, and be athletic enough to eat up screens and draws when Wisconsin's a little too aggressive in their 3-4 defense. So that's where he's a great fit. He might be the guy I'm most interested to see next fall, for the simple fact that he does come from an 8-man football school. If you're Wisconsin, if you're anybody, you have to be questioning not only how big the jump from 8-man football to Big Ten football is going to be, but you're adding 3 more players onto the field. The game's going to be a little different. The speed, the strength is going to be a huge adjustment for him. He did not play in any all-star games, to my knowledge, so he's coming into Madison pretty blind to, I guess, everything he's going to be up against. And I'm interested to see just how long that transition takes for him. Maybe I'm making too much out of it, and there is no transition. Like I said, this guy's still 6'6", 285. He can hold his own against a lot of people. He just hasn't faced anybody his size. This guy's the biggest and the baddest everywhere he goes, and it's not close. His high school team put him at linebacker, tight end, defensive end. They put him all over the field, and either gave him the ball on offense or let him block or let him just control everything defensively. He would just go wherever the play was and pretty much blow it up. Looking at his recruitment, a really great job by assistant coach Ted Gilmore. Wisconsin was sort of an afterthought. I don't want to go that far and say they were an afterthought, but when they offered, he was intrigued. It's Wisconsin. He knew it was a big football program. Maybe the best offer he had at the time before Oregon came calling. But this was a kid that was destined to either end up at Oklahoma State, which was closest to his home, or Kansas State, a program he was probably most familiar and most comfortable with. And he and his family were big on comfort. Now, when Wisconsin started getting into the mix, they were his first official visit. Not only did they wow him, but they did a really great job with him and his family. And like I said, the thing you'll hear Loudermilk mention most is how comfortable he was going far from home. And this was a kid, like I said, that was destined to play close to home. Wisconsin did a great job of wrestling him away from Oklahoma State, Kansas State, and Oregon, too, who made a big push at the end for him as well. So this, I think when you talk about what he brings to the Wisconsin defense, they're going to have two 6'6" or 6'5" defensive ends in Loudermilk and Hirschfeld. You got to remember, this 3-4 defense has been really good with 6'3" defensive ends. Those guys don't hide, the Vince Beagles and Joe Schoberts all that well. The offense and the quarterback can see what's coming. Now you're going to put these guys behind 6'6" athletic kids who can get to the passer if they want to as well. I think this is a big game changer for Wisconsin's defense if they can get these two on the field together. Like I said, the offensive line's going to have trouble picking up blitzes. The quarterback's going to need another half second to dissect what's going on and wait for the outside linebacker to kind of appear from out behind Loudermilk and Hirschfeld. This could be one of the more underrated and down the road more celebrated recruiting wins for Wisconsin, even when you're talking about a kid from Kansas from 8-man football that doesn't blow anybody away when you talk about his background. So that's 23 commitments for Wisconsin in the class of 2016. What do they have left to do with about 3 weeks before everything becomes official and prospects sign that dotted line? We're looking at about 3-4 spots at the most, and that fourth spot would either go to someone like Iowa quarterback commit Nate Stanley or 3-star athlete Malik Harrison out of Ohio. Two guys Wisconsin's not expected to get, but they would certainly make room for if either should have a change of heart here. Stanley's likely to stick with the Hawkeyes. Harrison's likely to stay home and play for the Buckeyes, probably more than likely. I'm pretty sure it's already a done deal that that's going to happen unless Michigan State can make some moves late. I doubt Wisconsin will be able to do anything. I'm not even sure if they're really trying at this point, but it's not like they have other places they need to go in terms of filling out this class. We're really looking at 3 spots. Biggest concern, running back. Wisconsin has really no offers out right now. You could say one in Brandon Stevens, but that's a really interesting scenario right now. If you remember, Stevens was the first running back Wisconsin offered. Stevens actually reached out to their coaching staff after Antonio Williams decommitted, expressing interest in that spot. A couple weeks later, he pulls out, says, I don't want to be recruited by Wisconsin anymore. I'm going to Stanford, where he's committed, and where he was committed at the time. The reason he initially reached out were some potential academic concerns. Now, this is a very good student, great GPA, very strong ACT, just not Stanford great. And they have cut ties with a lot of guys late, a lot of really good students. Wisconsin benefited by getting Arrington Farrar in the last cycle, a 4-star safety out of Georgia. A huge recruiting win for them. The Badgers are hoping the same thing happens with Stevens, who still hasn't been admitted to the school. It sounds like Stanford's going to wait till about 10, 11 days before National Signing Day before they make an official decision on what to do with him. The interesting part here is he's probably, I haven't checked the ACT dates, but I'm guessing there's not going to be one between January 14th and National Signing Day that he's going to be able to take. Maybe I'm wrong. So either Stanford thinks they can possibly find some wiggle room here, or it's going to be all for naught. And Wisconsin has done a smart move by reaching back out to Stevens, saying, hey, if it doesn't work out, we're here. Take your official visit the final weekend of January, and we'll get this thing going. I don't know how many other schools have stayed in contact with him. I know Texas and Oklahoma were there before. Like I said, Stevens kind of shut his recruitment down in December or so after he was kind of looking around at other schools. It sounded like Wisconsin was his number 2 choice. So the Badgers, could get a really strong 3-star running back falling into their laps. Now, if they don't get Stevens, which, like Farrar would be an absolute gift to them, they're going to make offers to probably 2 under the radar running backs. They still want 2, even though Pittsburgh commit Chris James is still out there. There's no guarantee Wisconsin can get him into school. That's always tricky with anybody, no matter of their academic standing, unless you're just Albert Einstein Jr. I shouldn't go that far, but it's tricky with the average student, even with good students. It's tricky to get kids to transfer. So they still want 2 high school running backs. If they can get James later, as I reported on Camp Confidential a couple weeks ago, James is going to finish out the school year at Pittsburgh to improve and make sure he's got his best chance to get into Wisconsin. The 2 guys I think have the most or the best chance of getting a Wisconsin offer. One of them is up there for sure, and Sam Brodner, the 3-star running back, was committed to Vanderbilt. Came to Wisconsin's camp in June. Wisconsin really liked him as a linebacker, almost offered him, but they had some really good options and were close on a lot of the guys that they had offers to in the spring. So they filled up at inside linebacker pretty quick with Dallas Jonte, Griffin Grady, and even turned a lot of other guys down after the summer as well. So some top-of-the-board players that they offered in the spring. Brodner ran really well at Wisconsin's camp, was, I believe, in the 4.5, 4.6 range, and he's a bruiser. So, he's got a good combination of size and speed. Not breakaway speed, but very good speed for his size, so which makes him a potential fullback prospect. He'll come in as a running back, but you never know how these guys' bodies are going to change. So, and he also, you figure he can play linebacker as well. Like I said, Wisconsin very close to offering him as a linebacker. So they just love the versatility, the all-around athlete he is, and, they think he has a future at running back. The next guy is a little more cloudy. If you asked me today, I think it's going to be Cameron Pickett out of Georgia who gets that offer as Wisconsin's speed back. Now, he's not exactly a small guy. He's about 5'10", 5'11", 205. So, kind of you think Jordan Stevenson build, but a little more a little more taller, a little more stocky, but definitely I think you could label him a speed back, even though he's got some quality size to him as well. Runs a 4.5, 14 offers. None of them are Power 5 offers. Wisconsin, he just decommitted from where was it? Miami of Ohio, I think. In December. So he's kind of back on the market here after being off it during his senior season. So he's getting some looks. I think Wisconsin is probably closest to being that first Power 5 offer, or maybe his only Power 5 offer. But I'm not, I don't get the feeling that they're exactly sold on that second guy yet. I think, like I said, Brodner, I think, was at the top of the board the last I heard. I think they're still deciding. And like I said, no offers with the exception of Stevens. And it's January 14th here. And Wisconsin's still not quite sure what they want to do. The good news is they got 3 or 4 guys they can get on February 2nd, even February 3rd, the day of National Signing Day. So, even though it's getting into crunch time, well, it's past crunch time, but even though it's getting really, really late, there's still no reason to kind of hit that panic button and go after somebody. You got time to see what happens with Stevens. You got time to do more evaluations, see if any more names pop up. But, those other names that are right there, I think Connell Young, who's picking up some steam out of North Carolina, just picked up an offer from Syracuse. He looks like a good pickup as a potential power back. He could challenge Brodner. The other speed back Wisconsin is really looking at is Khalil Herbert. Everyone, we've made a big deal out of him about how good we think he is. Wisconsin's still a little hesitant to make that offer on him. I don't know what the holdup is. Like I said, there's people in South Florida that rave about this kid. He outperformed a class of 2017 four-star, really good running back this season. And this was his first year at Heritage, went a big step up in competition and rushed for 900 yards, averaging around 8 yards a carry. So he had a really good year playing against the best competition. And as a 24/7 Sports National College Football recruiting analyst Ryan Bardo would tell you, he's very similar to that of James White, the former Badger running back, the former South Florida native. Those two are quite comparable coming out of high school. And White was recruited by running backs coach John Settle. So there's definitely some reason to believe he could get that offer. But like I said, if you ask me today, I think he is trailing Cameron Pickett out of Georgia. But, nothing has been set in stone yet. A lot of it may be determined on what happens with Stevens. If you can get a big name like that, maybe you just take one running back in 2016, knowing you have Chris James to fall back on. The reason I think you'd be more likely to take two is if you've got two under the radar names that you just can't be sure about, helps your chances of hitting on this class. And it's a key class for running backs. I mean, you got to look at what's behind Taiwan Deal, and he'll be a sophomore. Whether or not Wisconsin gets anything out of Bradrick Shaw, we'll see. He looks physically like a very good player. He'll be all right. But, that's really your one option behind him right now. And he's going into his sophomore year. And, you still got questions about Deal. Is he going to be a guy that can carry the load offensively, or do you need to pair him with a speed back? So it's very important that Wisconsin at least, gets a burner, whether it's James from the transfer market, whether it's Pickett or Herbert here. It's got to be the right call if you're going to maximize this team's potential going forward. So 23 commits, looking for 26 minimum. Also should have mentioned, we'll talk cornerbacks real quick. Not a lot going on there. Wisconsin's going to host 3-star Caesar Williams this weekend on an official visit. He's probably leaning Wisconsin right now ahead of SMU and Indiana. Hasn't set those two officials. We'll likely see how he feels after this weekend. Wisconsin could wrap things up at cornerback and get their fourth one done this weekend. But Williams, ideally would like to see SMU in Indiana. He's seen SMU. It's right down the street. But maybe just take that official to be sure. If Wisconsin doesn't get him, I don't think they'll move on another corner. I think they'll be fine with 3. Williams is kind of just like icing on the cake. He's a guy they evaluated late, didn't know about till late, and thought he stacked up really well to the other guys they were pursuing, whether it was Carlos Becker, KJ Sales, Teran Coleman. Felt like on film he was right there with those guys, so they'll obviously take him at a position they're going to need some bodies at here, especially after next season, and definitely need a guy or two in this freshman class to at least push for playing time and give them some depth at the number 4 corner spot and number 5 spot as well. Definitely need some more bodies there, so they will take a 4th if they can get one. Now, I say 4th, even though on paper there are only 2 cornerbacks committed right now, but there's the potential Eric Burrell moves to corner or at least starts there. There's the potential of that for Kendrick Pryor as well. If you ask me, in 2 years, will one of those guys be at corner? Wouldn't surprise me. So, Eric Burrell's sort of a corner safety combo right now. Kendrick Pryor Wisconsin's still trying to figure out what to do with him. I mean, they'll let him do whatever he wants in the end, most likely. But I think the defensive staff wants him at corner, offensive staff wants him at wide receiver. He can play both effectively, probably at the next level. So it wouldn't be surprising. I'm not going to label, either of those guys cornerbacks on signing day, but just know there's, I guess, you could say maybe 4 corners committed right now if Wisconsin needed them. 2 of Wisconsin's commits were U.S. Army All-Americans down in San Antonio. And if you got to watch the game, you were able to get a sneak peek at 4-star and top 50 offensive tackle Cole Van Lanen out of Bayport High School in Green Bay. And 4-star, top 100 defensive tackle Garrett Rand out of Chandler, Arizona. 24/7 Sports' director of recruiting, Steve Wiltfong, got a good look at both of them, not just during the game, but the week leading up of practices as well. We got Steve on the phone right now. Steve, Cole Van Lanen was playing for a 5th star down in San Antonio. I know those decisions won't be made until closer to signing day, but what did he show you at the Army All-American Bowl, and how did he compare to the other offensive linemen in attendance?
Well, it's obvious he's very smart. The Wisconsin commit and top 100 recruit out of the state of Wisconsin was one of the smarter offensive linemen when it came to the zone blocking scheme that they were implementing. And he's a guy that they moved inside and played at guard. He could play tackle, guard, or center, I think, in Madison after getting a look at him. Love his toughness, love his versatility, and love his brain.
What stood out to you about Garrett Rand?
The top 100 defensive tackle was what we thought he was. He's very, very strong. He's a little undersized from a height standpoint, but he's a guy that can be a plugger in the middle with his strength, and he's another guy that plays with toughness at the point of attack.
That will conclude today's show. As always, you can follow me on Twitter at Evan_Flood. The site is wisconsin.247sports.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll get back to you next week.